by the way, because retail can only drive you so far. Until the BlackRocks of the world are really all in on this, it'll only ever get so big.
What are you hearing from the institutional side? Is there a hesitation now that there's not regulatory clarity, as some have described it at this conference? And could that help bring more Wall Street players into the crypto ecosystem?
Well, I mean, look, on the one hand, there's some surprising positive news, right? Just this morning, BNY Mellon announced that they're going to provide custody support for customer crypto assets. That's a big deal. State Street has doubled down on this business over the last couple of weeks. BlackRock announced a Coinbase partnership. Google Pay said this morning that they're going to use Coinbase to clear Bitcoin payments inside of that environment. These are all amazing stories for institutional adoption, but there's still a lot of things missing. I mean, one is we don't have enough bank charters to provide custody support for the asset class. Our KYC and transaction monitoring tools aren't good enough, to really support bulletproof sort of regulated activity for asset managers. There's still a lot of things missing. So what I would say, just coming back to your earlier question, is in a world where all of the charlatans have now been flushed out, the three arrows of the world have all failed, what's left is the actual fundamental building, right? It's just like the 2000 .com bubble. The stupid ideas get flushed out, the tourists are gone, and what's left is to build an actual decentralized financial system for the world. That's who's left.
Unexpected reason to be bullish on VR. Tom laid out for us.
Well, thanks for having me. And first, let me say I have been very fortunate to be associated with River Spring Health and the Hebrew Home in Riverdale for 25 years under the leadership of Dan Reingold, CEO, and Dave Pomerantz, COO. Many awards for helping elderly improve their lifestyle. Recently turned to technology as a way to do that more with a grant from the Hauser Foundation. And VR and AR have been a real emphasis in terms of how technology can improve the life of seniors. Fascinating finding. First, I should say, I have been a real skeptic of near-term adoption of the metaverse. Figure Meta will figure it out over time, but near-term adoption, I've been skeptical. But on the other hand, as John would say, what we have seen here at the Hebrew Home is participation by seniors with headsets on, bringing the outside world to them, being able to take trips to Paris, to the Great Wall of China, to be able to go beyond the confines of living in an old age facility, being able to visit an old neighborhood that they used to live in, beginning to furnish GoPro cameras to families so weddings and graduations and Little League games can be brought in and they can virtually experience being actually there. It seems to ease agitation. It increases the attention span. The withdrawn become more engaged. They reminisce with more passion. These are 80 and 90-year-olds, and the comfort level of the headset seems to be fine. Now, I should point out all this coverage of Meta that you're talking about, this is not a Meta headset. This is made by Pico with an experience developed by a Boston-based company called Rendezvous that provides VR to the healthcare industry. And Pico happens to be owned by Dance, which, as you know, owns TikTok.
Okay, Tom, so interesting. It's not actually a Meta headset. It's unexpected, I say, because even my mom, who's not that old, has trouble working her smartphone and PC still. So it's a little surprising to look at sort of an older demographic that is becoming comfortable with these devices. Do you think that this can really pick up on a large scale, that they're going to be comfortable with this operating system when, a lot of folks are still trying to get used to the current ones?
I think so. I mean, obviously, it has to be done in the right way with people who understand the needs of seniors and with a headset that makes them comfortable. But we have over close to 300 participating. This isn't a forced activity. This is something people are looking for to do more of. They use it on average about 3 times a week. The Hebrew Home is having to double the number of headsets that it makes available, given the demand. And it seems to be quite successful. Now, this is largely, I call it more of an AR experience in that it's experiencing the real world virtually. But with the comfort level and the interest in doing it, you can easily see how this population would be interested in an avatar that presents a look that they might be more comfortable with socializing with others and be in a safe virtual environment where they can get out of a more isolated setting and into greater socialization, which could open up their world in other ways. So I see this being a pathway to more virtual reality that really does serve the needs of seniors. We all have parents and grandparents who are somewhat isolated as they get older, and this could really be an interesting way to change their whole day-to-day experience.
Welcome to the Crypto Teacher. And you know I come back with that video just to make you think. And we have Brian Brooks, and we know he's one of the best speakers and one of the revenge of the nerds. Don't let that nice face fool you. Remember, he was a part of One West Bank with Steve Mnuchin, and it was being funded by George Soros. And they took people's homes. So don't let them fool you. But he talks about it's time to build. And that's the reason why all the big banks and big corporations are coming in. And we know the perfect time is during the bear market. The retail investor is out. And we know during tough times, the masses are just going to be focused on surviving. And we know the NWO is going to create that distraction, so therefore they can build. And part of that distraction is the Hegelian dialectic. And Brian Brooks talked about Democrats versus Republicans. And guys, we know, yes, they have two different agendas, but they're both working on the same goal. And that's the fourth industrial revolution, where the robots, algorithms, and drones take over the economy, pay each other with crypto, and the sheep go inside the metaverse. And speaking of the metaverse, we have Tom Rogers on CNBC speaking about an elderly home that is testing the VR headsets on the elderly. They can travel in the virtual world. They can become an avatar and feel better about themselves. And who owns this headset? That's right, the same company owns TikTok. I hope that video opens your eyes. That's probably one of the most powerful videos, because as these headsets become more advanced, an elderly person wouldn't even want to come out of the virtual world. And remember, the Crypto Teacher told you, because he knows, when it comes to the New World Order, it's all planned out. You have a wonderful day.
So if you assume that the Republicans take one or both chambers, then I actually think the chance of bipartisan legislation is pretty high. And that is because I think crypto adoption's fairly high. Democrats realize that, and Republicans are really leaning in. On the other hand, if the Democrats hold both houses of Congress, the leadership of the Democrats has been quite hostile to crypto assets from the administration and in both houses of Congress. So I think it requires at least one house to change hands for there to be momentum. Happy talk. I know the industry says that, but I don't think it's true. You know, there's talk from sort of Democratic backbenchers and next-gen leaders, but the leadership of the party, both in the White House and at the regulatory agencies, let alone on the Senate Banking Committee, is uniformly negative. So I just don't see that happening. It's terrific that there's a group of young Turk Dems who are on our side, but that's not where the leaders are on that side. I don't think it was ever consumer protection, Kate. What I really think it's about who controls the financial system. And the crypto movement is all about a user-controlled financial system, and that just isn't what the older generation of Democratic leaders believe in. They believe in a more government-focused system that can be more easily surveilled, more easily controlled, that can direct people, toward the things that, the leadership believes is good for them. Whereas the younger generation is much more about using technology to unlock value for all Americans. But that's just not what the leaders from the 60s seem to believe. Have a lot of momentum around it. It has to do with making sure that stable coins don't create the risk of future bank runs. It seems like Democrats and Republicans both agree on that, and that's why I say if the Republicans take the House, I think the McHenry-Waters stablecoin bill has a lot of chance of moving forward because there's that shared belief system. On things like securities law and comprehensive crypto regulation, who owns it, SEC or CFTC, that's so political, I just don't see that happening.
Is there a bit of a turf war going on right now between the agencies?
No, I mean, for a change, that's always been the case. I think when I was in office, there was a rare moment where you had the Fed, the FDIC, and the OCC all on the same team, really trying to work together. But you don't usually see that even inside of one administration. And getting the nod to be the crypto regulator is a big deal. So even two Democratic agency heads aren't going to want to give that up easily. So for sure, there's a lot of that.
We've talked a lot this year about what's happened with Three Arrows, Voyager, Celsius. Any takeaway for DC and lessons learned that will affect regulation going forward? And is there a sense that there were mistakes made on the side of regulators and not preventing some of those massive losses?
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer is absolutely yes. And, I guess my first thought is, wouldn't it be better if these activities were happening inside of the regulatory perimeter? So, wouldn't it have been better if Three Arrows was regulated as an investment company? Wouldn't it have been better if Terra Luna was subject to banking regulations, right? But for whatever reason, this administration has kept those things outside, which means there's absolutely no visibility into what's going on. A bank would never have had the Terra Luna problem. It would have been seen way earlier. We didn't have that, so that's a problem. And I think the lesson of all of this is better for this to happen with supervision than without. That would be my main message. Some of the SEC oversight. Some of them should have been banks, like Terra Luna was engaging in money transmission and payments. They were paying interest. That should have been there. But there is a platform for all of this to happen. Keeping crypto out of the system is not a strategy.
I want to get your thoughts on the markets as well. I mean, the Fed has been a huge topic of conversation and what's driving crypto prices in the industry altogether. Anything else you're watching other than the Fed that could have an impact on prices and just the investing landscape for the next year or so?
Well, I mean, the macro environment is not just monetary policy, right? So the Fed is a key driver, but let's look at the war in Ukraine and what it means for all risk assets. So, in the same way that the Fed's hawkishness on inflation is bad for Bitcoin price. And I've been saying this for years. Some of your colleagues have made fun of me for saying, how can you say that? Turns out I'm totally right. But on the side of other macro stuff, let's say that something really bad happens in Ukraine. Like, let's say that the Russians detonate a nuclear weapon as part of their strategy. That'll be great for Bitcoin, unfortunately, because Bitcoin is a last resort when the system fails. So the question is, what other things in the system can fail? Not just high inflation, but national security or any other macro shock to the system. All of those things, give rise to high Bitcoin prices.
What about the potential for Bitcoin to decouple from traditional equities? It's been extremely tied to at least the NASDAQ. Do you have a sense of timeline or when at least Bitcoin will start to act as this independent safe haven for?
Look, I totally do. I mean, the times when that's happened have been times of crisis. So if you think about when Bitcoin went from 5,000 to 69,000, it was during the COVID lockdowns, right? When the stock market was going up and down, up slowly, but Bitcoin went up like a rocket ship. It was all because we were in a macro crisis environment and people saw it as a mega safe asset, right? It was a hedge against the end of the world. That's what it's historically been. When things go back into normalcy, out of a crisis mode, it's a risk asset. And the reason it's a risk asset is because it's thinly traded still today. So the two things that have to happen for Bitcoin to do well are more uncertainty in the world, weirdly, but also broader adoption. And when more people own it, it won't be like any other risk asset. It will trade for its fundamentals.
We're going to a different economy, and we're going to be learning more about that as we go. But clearly, we're learning that things can be done from remote locations. We're learning that technology can replace people even more than we thought.
We're not going back to the same economy. We're recovering, but to a different economy, and it'll be one that is more leveraged to technology. And I worry that that is going to make it even more difficult than it was for many workers.
In Silicon Valley, and my friends who work in technology know that what we did to the manufacturing workers, we are now going to do to the retail workers, the call center workers, the fast food workers, the truck drivers, and then even bookkeepers, accountants, insurance agents, lawyers, and on through the economy. So what happened to the manufacturing workers is a very clear sign.
This effort. And China has big plans for this. They intend to seed their digital yuan into the global environment by giving it away to visitors at next winter's Olympics. When they arrive at the airport, they're going to get yuan digital wallets. They're going to receive digital yuan. They're going to use it throughout their visits to Beijing, and then they're going to take it back to their home countries. They see this as a huge advantage. Why? Because who controls the underlying protocols, who controls the underlying standards of the future of money will control the future of money.
Powerful person in the world is the storyteller. The storyteller sets the vision, values, and agenda of an entire generation to come. Steve Jobs. And guys, you know I truly believe in this. When you look at the New World Order, they're the storytellers. And that's the reason why I wrote my New World Order book. But guys, now it's time to change the current generation. And I wrote 3 kids' books. You know, I love the Trinity because I understand the power that's in it. So I have 3 books. We have an opportunity to change the generation, to educate, not just me, but I want to show you that I take action on a daily basis. And I want you to take action on a daily basis. Whether it's your job, whether it's in your community, we have an opportunity right now to educate the masses. I posted this on my Twitter account. Please share, but this is a short clip of the 3 books. There's going to be a clothing line and action figures. Please get these books for your kids, nephews, cousins, friends, so therefore we can start the re-education now. Because as we see, the 4th Industrial Revolution foundation is definitely here. Robots, algorithms, drones, taking humanity out the picture. We have to re-educate. But let's get into the video.
Part 1. King Joshua and Grandma Tam save the village. Part 2. King Joshua and Grandma Tam save New York from COVID-33. Part 3. King Joshua and Grandma Tam goes to China.
It's mandatory to get part 1, part 2, and part 3 of this series. It's time to re-educate Generation Z.